welcome to Brant Ranch Garage. Today I'm going to continue the short block build for this 292 for the camper truck. First of all, I need to clarify something I said yesterday that was inconsistent. Inconsistent with reality. These oil galleys that come up to the head actually go into the center cam bearing, not the T between the cam bearing and the main bearing. I've illustrated that with these welding rods that they go right into the cam bearing. And that also confirms that we're in the right spot with the cam bearing. So next step is I'm going to use plastic gauge to measure the crankshaft bearing clearance, just to make sure it's right on track. And I think I'm going to complete the whole short block assembly in this video. It gives you a good spot where most people get their block back from the machine shop, so it'll apply to more people, and we'll get this put together. Okay, so I have the green plastic gauge set in here in the main bearings. Now the process is I'll put the crank in, I'll put the rod caps on, the main caps on, and torque them down, and then take it all apart, and we'll see what the bearing clearance is. Okay, it's not bad. We were looking for 0025, and most of them were closer to 0.03, but they didn't really exceed that. So within the precision of the device, I think we're probably okay. Nothing really horrible, no really narrow ones. This one even was 0.003, so I think we're good. I think that passed with somewhat confidence. I didn't have this crank ground, I just had it polished, so that might account for a little bit of looseness, but I think we're all right. I think we're all right. Okay, so next I'm going to install the lifters, and I'm going to dip each foot of them into the cam lube and then put a little assembly lube on the main body of it and put it in. Okay, I was just thinking that maybe you were wondering, the Y-block doesn't have any provision for hydraulic lifters. So that's why there's no oil gallery running through the lifters. Anyway, interesting tidbit. The next thing I'm going to do is install the cam. I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to put assembly lube on the journals, and then I'll put the cam lube on the lobes after I get it in there. I'm going to get a little paintbrush and just brush it on afterwards, because otherwise everything gets mixed up. It's a huge mess. So I'm going to try it this way this time, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. Yeah, I'll be able to get in there and coat those with cam lube, which is a molybdenum based stuff. And then we'll move on to, I guess, putting the crank in. Okay, so I made a little more progress on the short block. I've got the cam all lubricated and ready to go. I'm going to use this modern rubber rear main seal instead of the rope one that came with the gasket set. So really ready to set the crank in, and as you can see, I've offset the ends of the seal so that it doesn't line up with the mating surface of the cap. The Y-block has a separate cap for the seal from the cap itself. So let's get the crank put in. Okay, so I'm putting assembly lubricant on the bearings. I also put some on the seal to keep it from starting up dry. That was part of the instructions. Got kind of a lot. You never have too much, right? there's where it goes. So next step, let's put the caps on. There's an arrow and a number on each cap, so you have to put them back in the right spot. I already put some ARB thread lubricant on the bolts. I'm gonna have to speed this up because you're not going to want to sit here and watch here, but you don't want to hurry through something like this. Everything has to be right, in the right spot. The caps are an interference fit with the blocks, so it's not unusual to have to fiddle with them a little bit. I'm just going to snug these up for now. Okay, now we got to do this seal thing, which is, here's the seal carrier, and it goes right down like this. Okay, I want to put a little RTV in the bottom of the block where the seal mates. And okay, so the seal, okay, it goes this way. So seal needs to, okay, like that. So this is the inside of the engine, and you want the seal to point towards the inside of the engine, towards the thing that you're sealing. There. That seems pretty good. Okay, so Y-block rear main seals have these side seals that go down into the cap like that. So I'm going to put some assembly lube on them, and hopefully I can worry them down in there without taking the cap back off. but we'll see. First one went in okay. Okay, that'll work. Okay, then these metal rods go in on the narrow side to kind of stiffen it. It should be nice if those were a little pointier. I put a little point on them, on the grinder. Oh wait, one second. I don't think it's unusual to have to knock them a little bit. What's that they say to a boy with a hammer? All the world's a nail. Okay. I think that's all right. We might do a little RTV on that one side when we put the oil pan on. Now I'm going to torque everything down. I'll spare you most of the grunting and groaning involved. The only thing I wanted to point out is that there wasn't a torque spec for this seal support, seal holder. And so I'm going with a 5/16 bolt, which wants 12 to 15 foot-pounds. Okay, that was a bit of a blunder. I can't get to torque these bolts back here because the seal support is in the way, so I have to take it out again. So don't do as I do. Do it right. Okay, we're all set. I did meticulously repeat all the steps involving the seal retainer and the side seals and the pins and the RTV in the bottom and all that stuff, and it all worked out fine. I didn't have any trouble with the seal being torn or anything. And before I did that, I torqued all the main caps to 100 foot-pounds, which is, the range was 95 to 105. And we got a pretty nice spinning crank now. So I think we're good. Next we'll start putting some pistons into this thing. Okay, we're back working on the 292. It took some time because I misplaced some parts, and I really regret that. This washer right here is very important, and what it does is its thickness in relation to the thickness of the thrust plate provides your camshaft end play, and so very important that that spacer be in there. And I think I just left it on the old cam and threw it away, so I had to get another one of those, and some of the other pieces for the front of the engine were missing as well. So next we're going to put on the timing chain, and I'll show you how that gets timed. Okay, so timing on the Y block is a little different. You want to line up the two dots. Well, okay, this is a adjustable crank sprocket. So there's two dots. This dot shows you which is the standard straight up 0 keyway. And so I've got it on that keyway on the crank. And then there's another dot over here that you want to be horizontal. You don't want to line up the dots, you want it to be horizontal to the right. And then we do the same thing with the cam. There's a dot right here, you probably can't see that. So there's a dot here, and get this back in there. Okay, so now we've got them on. Now we need to count the number of pins between the dots to make sure that we're right. And so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's correct. That's correct. So we're going to worry this back here. Then the next piece is this spacer, which goes on there, and then we have the fuel pump eccentric, another spacer, and the bolt. And that's basically it all together. And you have to have all those spacers. So there's the spacer by the cam, which is very important. Then there's a keyed spacer that goes between the cam sprocket, and then there's between the cam sprocket and the eccentric, and then there's another spacer that brings the eccentric out to the level of the washer under the bolt. So that's where we're at, and I'll torque that into place and we'll move on to pistons. I just want to point out how easily this engine turns over because of that rubber rear main seal. It's really not bad at all. Okay, so here's our parts for the pistons. We got to put all this stuff in today. In the olden days, I used to dunk the whole head of the piston up to the rings in a thing of oil and then put it in. But checking the internet, all the cool kids are now using this dry film from Quick Seat, and also this special ring assembly lube on the rings. So we're going to be trying that this time and see how it turns out. Okay, following the Quick Seat directions, I have wiped down the cylinder walls with acetone, and then I'll wipe them down again with WD-40, and they're now dry. And as I understand it, this is the powder, and we put a little on our finger and rub it around. Oh, it really doesn't take very much. Rub it all the way around. And it says we're supposed to do the whole cylinder, which will be kind of hard to get back down in there, but and it's supposed to give it a kind of a green, yeah, I can see a green cast to it. So yeah. Okay. We'll give it a try. Okay, next we're going to put the rods onto the pistons with the piston pin. And for the first four, we're going to assemble it with the cap number facing up and the notch facing forward. Put a little assembly lube on the piston. rod, small end. And we got just like that one. No, not just like that. That's why you always check. Okay. There. Those are the same. Next, we're going to put the clips in, which is these wire ones with these pistons. And you do that by starting that end and twisting it in to the location. You want to make sure that they're completely seated. And do the other side. Well, that's getting kind of fiddly right there. There. Okay. I think that one's pretty well ready to go. I'll go ahead and do the rest of them, and then we'll put the rod bearings in and then the rings. Okay, that's all done. I did get pretty fast with the clips after a little practice. I should point out that these are sealed power 60 thousandths over cast pistons, and then the rods are stock rods with I had the machine shop rebush the ends and install ARP rod bolts and then resize the big end. So that was all done at Height Automotive in Grain Valley, Missouri. And you know, they did a really nice job. When you have ARP rod bolts, the caps get really hard to get off, and so I actually had to buy a tool to break them apart. So that's something to be aware of. If you don't have that tool, you might ask the machine shop to send you the rods already separated, because they probably have that tool. Okay, so the rod bearings are in on both sides, and I've laid out the rings to do them. This is the square top ring, the beveled second ring, the expander, and then these are the oil ring rings. Before I did that, I also checked the ring end gap by placing a ring kind of level in the cylinder. You measure the distance between the two ends because they will expand somewhat. And I found out the spec for that was 0.010 to 0.025, and mine measure 0.022. So should be just fine. There won't be any, if they crash together, then you got problems. But these should be all good. And so we're going to use this product. Make sure there's no, okay. And it instructs us to put a little bit on each ring and also on each on the skirt. So I'll do the rings first. The first one to go on is the expander for the oil ring. Take one of the oil rings. Stuck together. Do the same with the other oil ring. And in general, you don't want the gaps to be at the same spots. So my gap in the first one is around there, so I'll go around here to start the second one. Being careful not to scratch the piston. I'm going to go grab a tool I have to expand the rings. Okay, here's the tool I was talking about. It certainly makes life easier. It's not perfect, but we'll give it a try. So the first one I'm going to use is the second compression ring, and it has a dot on it. And that means that that's supposed to go up. The rings are sharp. I'm going to end up with cuts by the end of the day. In theory, this is supposed to hold it. I got it stuck in the top groove. That's not good. Let me see if I can get that out of there. There we go. I don't want to get the second one in there. I don't know if we're going to be able to show this. Okay, we're going to start over. There. Yes, that's still in the right spot. Okay. Now we'll take the top ring and the top ring doesn't matter. It's not marked, so it must not matter which way it goes. There. So we want to rotate those. Gaps 180 degrees. And you see there's quite a bit of tension, you know, when they're expanded. So let's do the rest of them. Okay, so I got all the other rings on. I wish I could tell you that thing where the second ring got stuck in the first ring groove never happened again, but it did. Next, we're going to try and follow the directions about coating the skirts. Not a little vague, but I think we can kind of do sort of the idea. I assume that's about what they want. Now we're going to put our spring compressor on. Let's just one final check, make sure our rings are oriented kind of not right on top of each other. I've got a little roll of Scotch tape down there to hold it up. And yeah, I don't know why the tool's on the wrong side. Then we just tighten this guy up. There. That should be about ready to go. We don't want to forget about that. And also notice I've got these low-tech connecting rod bolt protectors. I ordered some nice ones, but They never showed up. So I found these just vacuum caps that fit pretty good. We're ready to put this in the engine now. So yeah, I think we're ready. Okay, so this is the orientation we want. We've got the notch to the front, and we've got the number on the bottom. And I also turned the crank so that journal is all the way down. That was the bearing. Looks like we're getting hot. Okay. Let's hope we can get that one. Yep. All right, so there's one piston in the hole, and I think I'll go ahead and do number 5 and on like that. So yeah, the hammer handle is the universal piston installing tool. That's just a rule. Okay, so it's all together. I finished up by torquing the rod cap bolts to 50 pounds per the ARP instructions. Everything went fairly well. It's still kind of a hassle to deal with those rod caps because of the ARP bolts. I might investigate something else if I ever do one of these again. It's just so hard to find aftermarket parts that you want to support people that do have aftermarket parts for the oil lock. So yeah, that went pretty well. Pretty confident that we got everything done that we needed to do on the short block, and we'll move on to the front engine dress next probably, and the oil pump. So thanks for watching.